The Chernobyl disaster, a catastrophic nuclear explosion. The Chernobyl disaster, which occurred on April 26, 1986, is considered the worst nuclear power plant accident in history. Located near the town of Pripyat in what was then the Soviet Union, modern-day Ukraine, the explosion at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant's Reactor No. 4 released massive amounts of radioactive material into the atmosphere, causing widespread environmental and human devastation. What happened during the disaster? 1. The reactor explosion. The disaster began during a late-night safety test in Reactor No. 4. The test aimed to simulate a power outage to evaluate whether the reactor could operate safely on low power. Operators, however, violated safety protocols and disabled critical safety systems. Combined with a flawed reactor design, this led to a sudden and uncontrollable chain reaction. At 1:23 a.m., the reactor overheated and exploded, destroying the core. The explosion released a massive cloud of radioactive material, including iodine-131, cesium-137, and strontium-90, into the air. 2. Immediate consequences. 2 plant workers died on the night of the explosion, while dozens of first responders suffered from acute radiation syndrome, ARS, due to the extremely high levels of radiation. The fire in the reactor burned for 10 days, spreading radioactive particles across Europe. It took more than 500,000 workers, known as liquidators, to contain the disaster. Environmental and health impact 1. Radiation fallout. The radioactive plume spread across much of Europe, contaminating land, water, and air. Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia were most affected, with approximately 200,000 square kilometers of land contaminated. Pripyat, the nearest city with a population of 49,000, was evacuated 36 hours after the explosion. The city remains a ghost town to this day. 2. Health consequences. Thousands of cases of thyroid cancer have been linked to radiation exposure, particularly in children who consumed contaminated milk. Long-term exposure led to increased cancer rates, genetic mutations, and chronic illnesses among those in affected areas. 3. Environmental effects. Large swaths of forests became known as the Red Forest due to radiation killing trees. Wildlife initially suffered, but some species have since returned due to the absence of human activity in the exclusion zone. Containment and cleanup efforts 1. The sarcophagus. In the aftermath of the explosion, a massive concrete structure, called the sarcophagus, was constructed to encase Reactor No. 4 and prevent further radiation leakage. Decades later, in 2016, a more advanced new safe confinement structure was installed to cover the deteriorating sarcophagus, providing a safer, long-term solution. 2. Evacuation and exclusion zone. A 30-kilometer exclusion zone was established around the plant, and more than 350,000 people were evacuated from nearby areas. The zone remains largely uninhabited, though some residents, known as self-settlers, returned despite the risks. The legacy of Chernobyl 1. Global impact on nuclear power. The disaster highlighted the dangers of nuclear energy and led to stricter international safety standards for nuclear reactors. Some countries, such as Germany, began phasing out nuclear power altogether, while others invested heavily in improving reactor safety. 2. Cultural and historical significance. Chernobyl remains a haunting reminder of the dangers of human error and technological failures. It has inspired countless books, documentaries, and the critically acclaimed 2019 HBO series Chernobyl. 3. A unique ecosystem. Despite the high radiation levels, wildlife has flourished in the exclusion zone. Species such as wolves, lynx, and wild boar now inhabit the area, creating a unique example of nature reclaiming a toxic environment. Conclusion. The Chernobyl disaster serves as a stark warning about the potential consequences of nuclear energy when safety measures are ignored or poorly managed. Decades later, its effects are still being felt in the environment, human health, and global attitudes toward nuclear power. While the exclusion zone remains a symbol of destruction, it is also a powerful testament to nature's resilience.